of that plays out in your mind. And then when I get this letter, and I even with the Department of Justice with the Smithsonian, when I get the letters from them, I'm terrified. I mean, I don't even want to open them. I will look at them for days. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's the Department of Justice. You're like, I'm just a regular guy. I want to just paint pictures for goodness sake. Leave me alone. You know.
Julian Raven, how's it going, man?
It's going great. It really is. It's a new season, and a long-awaited battle has opened up for me once again.
Man, it seems like every time I talk to you, going through something. So what's going on, man? I see the city that your studio is in is kind of messing with you a little bit. What's going on?
Well, it's not actually the city; it's the state. And
It's a
I,
state.
yeah, this is the State Department of Environmental Conservation. You guys have probably got something going on over there where you are. And listen, they have a legitimate job to do in tracking down the polluters and the bad guys and this type of thing. But unfortunately, my experience and my now it's more than that. It's now beyond just, oh, I think this is twisted or a little bit lopsided. I don't think that they can distinguish between what is legitimately a, perpetrator of somebody who has, polluted and something like that, and someone like myself who is not the. I came to them before I bought the building. I knew the building had issues, and I went to them with a vision, and I said, "Listen, I'm an artist, and I got the. This is a blighted building, or was in the middle of this town, a beautiful city, Elmira, New York. It's a beautiful upstate New York City, small city. So it's just a little bigger than a town. Used to be a massively popular place in the 40s and the 50s of the last century. It was where Mark Twain, his studio, although they moved it, Mark Twain lived and died here, and he's buried here. This is no, he wasn't born here, but this is where he lived. And in New York State, this is where all the celebrities and the rich and famous, they would come for summer in the 40s and 50s to Elmira. If you ever watched that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, there's a scene in it where they're in this bar, and one of the I can't remember which character says, "I'm off to Elmira," and it's like a mention there where this city was a big deal in that era. And then it died, and a massive flood came, and economic collapse, and it is like a ghost city now. So the whole region, other than Ithaca to the north of me, where Cornell University is that's a thriving area around that university, and Corning to my 20 minutes to the west of us is where Corning Incorporated is, the massive glass manufacturer, supplies
Yeah.
for iPhones and everything else. Amazing company. So these are like little rare economic hubs of prosperity in the upstate region, which by and large is just very depressed.
Yeah.
And so Elmira is like that, Ricky. This is where we are. So I managed to buy this building years ago, 2014. Beautiful. I'd been in Spain painting for a season, and I came back and I said, I need a big space. I need big flat floors where I can, because I paint on the floor. My canvases are rolled out on the floor, and I paint on the. So I wanted,
Yeah, your canvases are huge.
huge, right? So that's in general. I do paint upright sometimes, but in general, if I'm doing my drip and splash, it's all flat. So I saw this. I knew this building. It was blighted. It was abandoned. Nobody wanted it, and I never knew why. And I kept driving by because it's on the main thoroughfare. It's like right here
Right.
in the middle of town. And I got back from Spain, and I'm like, man, I need a space, and they're very affordable around here. So I contact the code department, and I'm like, what's the deal with this building? It looks like it's abandoned. I thought maybe the city owned it. And they're like, oh no, this like contamination problems. You need to talk to the state. So I'm like, okay, let me talk to the state. And I call up the DEC, and I speak to a guy who was he was in this whole more than 10 years now. He was the only, and this is a sad experience that I have, Ricky, which is you find in these bureaucracies one like genuine article, one person who's like both human and gets it and is cooperative, and it was just a good conversation. I shared my vision. I'm a skilled contractor. I'm going to renovate this building. I'm not a wealthy guy. I have my skills. It's my wealth is in my equity, is in my abilities as an artist, as a creator. That's what I do. And so I've renovated, and I've done beautiful renovations for people in homes. And my last business building down on the south side of the same city, I did the same prior to the 2008 crash. So this guy got it, and he's like, "Oh, this is great." And I said, "So what's the deal with the contamination?" He says, "Well, he's like talking about it." And I said, "Well, will they indemnify me? In other words, will they protect me so that I can buy the building, renovate the building, give them access to the building, let them do their job. If there's something really serious, let them dig it up and fix it. And
Right.
then if there's someone that's culpable, go after the bad guys." Well, he's like, "Yeah, of course, that should be fine." But he wasn't the lawyer. And when I spoke to the lawyer, he was just as folded armed as you could get. And I was like, "What?" I said, "Did you hear what I said?" I said, I have nothing to do with this, and I want to renovate. And this is on the main center of Elmira. Any effort to upgrade the city and bring vision and creativity and anything, my mind, and maybe that's where I'm naive, I would think they would be like, "Oh, Mr. Raven, welcome."
Right. I mean, I certainly would be.
You think they'd say, "What can we do for you? How can we help you?" Because they obviously have a job to do, and we can cooperate. And I said, "Wouldn't it be
Right.
great?" I said, there can be a story and a positive cooperation, state and artist, city, and we make this really cool thing, and then people get inspired to do the same, and then they're not afraid to call. You see, the thing with contaminated properties is everybody is terrified because legitimately there are things that are really dangerous. But then
Right.
there are contamination levels that are not dangerous, not a threat. And the product that is supposedly there is something like a common use chemical, which is what I have under the ground here, which is it's called PCE, which is what you get your clothes dry cleaned in. Have you ever had your shirt done and it has that
Yeah.
smell to it? That's the smell. Or you use brake cleaner when you're working on a car or truck. You can buy
Right.
it at AutoZone, and it's a chemical product, PCE. You can buy it neat in the can and just spray that stuff on, and people use it and blast it. That's what they clean clothes with. It's a very good degreasing cleaning agent. And so, 300 feet northwest of me, about in 2008, I think it was 2008. Sorry, there was a dry cleaner. It was a commercial industrial dry cleaner that was a massive polluter. They had, before regulation came in the 90s, these dry cleaners who were using PCE and TCE, these two chemicals to clean, they would dump the stuff in the drain. They would just dump it
Wow.
out the back door. They once it got used, once it lost its potency, they would take the chemical and just dump it on the street, basically throw it in the trash. They would pour it down the drains. And so for years, not just here, every dry cleaner, and if you look into it, it's probably all over your state the same. They
Yeah.
use the same chemical, unregulated, and so it leached. And the stuff is molecular on a molecular level. It's an amazing, very, very as a cleaner, it can fall through the atomic structure. Like if you pour it onto something, it's just going to go fall right through it because that's how
Right.
it cleans. It gets right into the very minute fibers of garments. And so, they pour it out the back door of their operation, and it contaminates. And this area was contaminated, and I'm downstream from them. So I went in 2014. I looked at all the studies, and I said, this building's downstream from you guys have said there's the arrow, the groundwater's flowing this way, and they're right over there, and they've dug it up, and it's the same stuff. And I'm like, this building, because this building was never a dry cleaner, it was a storage unit. And but the DC insisted, no, it was a dry cleaner, and they really, I mean, I got threatening letters from them, and I was like, I did the research, I had to present it to them, and they finally accepted it wasn't a dry cleaner. I had to change the tune of their story. So there's a lot of these factual inaccuracies that have gone on that I have begun to suspect, Ricky, that when you're dealing with massive money, because there's a super fund, a state super fund, there's a
Yeah.
federal super fund of billions of dollars that are used to clean up polluted properties. And you can just
Yes.
imagine the flow of that money and the giving of contracts, and there's huge room for all sorts of sort of dastardly deeds to go on
And
because
bureaucracy. And
right,
bureaucracy.
and money. And so when I come up against something like that, I immediately it sort of provokes in me. I don't get afraid and run away. I push in and I want to say, well, hold on a second. This is America. This is New York State.
Right.
We're supposed to be like smart and we're supposed to be like progressive, maybe, if that's a good term. And
Yeah.
and, and here's an artist coming to you saying, hey, this is what I want to do. You guys can do your job. We can work together. And in a reasonable world, in my mind, I would expect them to cooperate. Well, they didn't. And so this, plus all of these sort of it's basically misclassifications. And I go back to whether they are incompetence, whether they're just people who wanted a government job who shouldn't be doing this work, who
Right.
just sign off on these classifications, and it's not actually the case because they hire private contractors to do the science, and
Yes.
then it goes through the DAC system, and I found so many errors in what they've done that I'm like, and I challenged them, and they corrected, and I was like, yeah, this is a real problem. So once that they decided after 20 years that they wanted to resolve this issue, they sent me letters and they said, oh, well, we're at the stage now, we're going to have at some point a conclusion and then a public meeting, and then we are going to pursue remediation. And I'm like, well, I'm going to see how this works out. And there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on this year, and this is how sort of bad the administration goes. I went to Spain to care for my mother in 2023, and I told them, I said, I'm leaving the country for a season. I said, if this meeting comes up or you get your final conclusion, you need to let me know. And if there's a meeting, I need to come and fly back for it, or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Oh, they send me an email. We'll take care of it. We'll remind you, or we'll tell you, whatever. Well, I'm in Spain at the beginning of this year in March, and I get a call from a friend of mine, and he's like, "Your building's on the news," and I said, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah, they're having a public meeting and all this type of stuff." I said, "Really?" And yeah, they had organized this whole thing, knowing that I was out of the country, and they
Wow.
they did not inform me. And I was like, you got to be kidding. If that guy didn't tell me, they would have gone ahead and had some meeting about my property with the public and their plans to do XYZ, spend $600,000 taxpayer money, and then potentially bill me for the cleanup. This is
Right.
where the issue comes. So I was like really miffed. I'm like, you guys, you have told, and this is like a series of these administrative, faux pas. And again, I go back to whether it's incompetence or whether it's malicious. I really don't know whether they're just stupid. There's something so serious. How could you plan a public meeting about somebody's
Right.
property, knowing they're out of the country, and then not tell them? And
Right.
still and go, and it was in the news, the TV, and everyone, and you're like you're planning a conversation about an American citizen's property protected by the Constitution of the United States, and you're going to have some meeting where you're going to rub your hands together and discuss how you're going to do this, this, and this, and you have not invited the owner. I mean, that to
Right.
me was like really wow. So I said, you guys, you should push this meeting off because I'm coming back to the US. And they eventually did, which is good. Go through the meeting. The meeting was a joke. It was when I got to the meeting, they had the wrong address on the board when we walked into the yeah, yeah. I stood there and I said to them, "Oh, I'm glad it's this building property. All the liability then goes to this address, right? And they were like, oh, they wrote it down wrong. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And anyway, it gets going, and hardly anyone is there. There's only like two people from the public and myself and my son. But the feeling I got, and this is one of these gut feelings you get. Yeah, I'm attuned to my intuition. A lot of my life has been guided by my intuition, a discernment of environments or people, and there's something wrong. I'm just like, there's really something. The way they're behaving, they're acting like or trying to be nice, but behind what I'm seeing and hearing, you can't put your finger on it, but there's something that's not right. And
I've been through the exact same thing, brother, and with something completely like with something different. I mean, um, I've have had the similar experiences with people in authority, uh, people in positions of power over
sure,
certain things. And it could be something as simple as a secretary who believes their job is different than what they are. Like I come across incompetence all day, every day. And it really boils down to, and I hate to be that kind of guy that says that it has anything to do with DEI, but I think we got so far away from meritocracy that asses in the seats is good enough. And it's become a real issue in my life. I come across it day after day after day when I even in customer service, if you don't have the answer to a question, go find that answer, you know? And
it,
it's so unbelievable.
it is, and that I think there is a lot of truth to that. I think, and I don't know for this area. I know this area pretty well. I've been here 20 years now. Um, I've heard a lot of comments from people that they all the area is very depressed economically, so opportunity is very very low, and young minds and young talent leave. It's called the brain drain. So they
Yeah.
leave towards the big cities. The people that stay, and not everyone, but I've heard it often that it's like, oh, get a government job because if you stick it out for 20 years, you're gonna get your little pension. And it's like the government job is the thing to get. So,
And these jobs are made up jobs.
well, these are
A lot of them are made up jobs. Like you know the jobs report that we had not too long ago and how they had to shave off some of those jobs and it was incorrect.
you
How
just
this happens is they will assign whole departments that don't actually do anything so they can add those numbers into the jobs report. And people think I'm full of shit when I say this stuff, but I'm like, those government jobs that like I know a lot of people that have government jobs, but these are, they have necessary jobs. But there's this whole subset of jobs in the government that don't actually do anything. They are there to fill a seat, to push some paper. They don't make any decisions.
well,
They
that I
can't
think,
answer any questions.
yeah, that is really important what you're saying, because at this meeting, when I arrived there, there's two people sitting at a desk when I arrived, and this is 6 p.m. I think it was 5 6 p.m. So it's after hours. So these people are on the overtime clock. There's two people sitting there. I walk in. There's there were six people sitting in the audience. There was myself and my son, two neighbors, and one guy who I think he was like security of theirs. He didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. He wasn't media. He wasn't writing anything. He sat there with a cap on, and I'm like, this guy, I think he's just like some type of, I don't know. He was an enigma, and because he didn't say anything, he did. And then there was a DEC official in the audience, and then on the platform, I think if I'm not mistaken, there were the two outside. There was four, maybe it was four, including them, or five. There was like five, there was at least six in total with the guy in the audience sitting in this meeting. And that's that same thing. You have the same sense of like saying, this meeting probably could have been handled by two people.
Right.
You had the geologist and then the project manager. But no, you had the geologist, the project manager, you had a regional director, you had the health and human services, you had like 5 or 6 people. They're all there, and okay, yeah, well, why? Well, they're talking about spending $600,000 of taxpayer money to a contractor who's obviously highly motivated to get the job. He's a private contractor, and I made sure I got him to answer that question right there on the platform. But that, going back to that point that you say, the possibility and probability that we're dealing with this level of incompetence because there are all these jobs that are really just, you could get by with two, if not three, at least half, and well trained, and a trim government that's not bloated, and all those things are all legitimate. And I think New York State, obviously, the sense that I got in that meeting was that. And I was like, I would expect, if it's a meeting like this and this is a fact-based meeting and this is the science and boom, 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 any questions, this was just like meandering and you couldn't hear them. And I just was like, it just added to me to the confusion that I've experienced, or the incompetence that sadly is in this organization. Now, it gets even worse, unfortunately, because the whole part about my lawsuit, which is why I put out the press release, it's all in the news locally. I have them on November 19th, in a few weeks' time at 9 a.m. at the New York Supreme Court in Chemung County, which is actually in the city of Elmira, where I am. I have my lawsuits. I have a hearing, what's called an OSC hearing. It's an order to show cause. The judge has ordered the DEC to turn up and prove their case, because what they have done, and again, this gets into the corruption possibility, and I don't have the facts of it all right now, but the classification of a brownfield or of a contaminated site, there are like 5 classifications. And the first 3 are like the serious ones. The first 2 are like the way that I illustrate it is, number 1 is like, DEFCON 1, it might be, or whatever it is like, imminent threat. There's a spill, the people are going to suffer and get poisoned, and you've got to go and have emergency. The government's got to get involved and clean up and protect, and that
And then
class.
some tertiary
Right.
responses.
Exactly. Then class 2 is a significant threat. And the illustration I use these military ones. One was like the arrival of the British fleet in 1775, it was, or 1776, when they finally arrived. And off the coast of Staten Island, there's like 400 plus British ships by August the 10th, 1776, and you see a massive stream of redcoats disembarking onto the beach by the thousands. That's an imminent threat. And you have then Paul Revere, right, galloping off. The redcoats are coming. The redcoats are coming. That's an imminent threat. The only appropriate response to that is immediate action.
Right.
And the second threat I illustrated by saying it's like the Cuban Missile Crisis. The president discovers there are nuclear weapons 90 miles off the coast of Florida in Cuba, and everyone's up in arms. It's a serious, significant threat. What is the response? It's containment. They do a quarantine around the island. They send ships. They have massive military mobilizations, training, and kids under their desks, and everyone's sort of preparing, because it's a significant threat. It's a threat. It's real, but it's
Right.
not imminent. It's like sitting there. And that's like class 2. And then there is the class 3, which means, like Mexico, south of the border, is a nation that has a military. It's just sitting there. The military is no threat. It is no threat to the United States. It's no threat to the world. They do not have a military beyond their borders. They don't have big ships or airplanes. Their military is all focused on their country, national defense there, and taking care of their own internal problems. And so there's like a self-contained, they have a military. It's down there across the border. It's there. They have guns and bombs and that, but there's no threat. They have
Right.
absolutely this. They don't rise to any threat against the United States. That's like the third classification. So my property was classified as a number 2, the significant threat, that there is potential for some terrible community catastrophe or something. And I'm like, oh, so at the public meeting. So I'm like, so who's threatened by what's there? And there was like silence. And I said, what were the readings in like the neighboring properties that are a long way? I have no one around me immediately. And I said, what were and they're like, there were none. And then I said, is there any readings in the air or anything? Nope. And so it's like, so where's the
So
threat?
it's just topsoil samples, right?
No, it's down below. It's in the, and this is the thing. It's in there's a presence of it in the groundwater, but the levels are just above the levels that are significant. In other words,
Right.
they're
Okay.
legal. This is a legal threshold, but the groundwater is not the drinking water. The
Right.
drinking water wells in Elmira are 5,000 feet to the north of me, where I'm downstream from them. So it's like, yeah, this stuff's going to flow upstream 5,000 feet. It's impossible. Or a mile, 1.4 miles west of us across town, both of these fresh water wells were already contaminated by dry cleaners nearby them. So
Right.
this was never a dry clean. It can never, whatever's here, the quantity that there is here. I read this report. This is amazing, Ricky. There was a massive polluter about 2 miles north of me, excuse me, called Facet. Was since the 1880s, a building all sorts of metal bombs, machinery. These were they were the uber polluters. They had lagoons where they would dump their spent toxins. They
Gross.
over 500 barrels of stuff was discovered buried in the underground. And in one report, they said at 20 feet below the ground, in the water, groundwater, they found a pool. They found like basically a floating pool on top of the groundwater, 20 feet down of the contaminant. There was so much of it that it
Whoa.
formed its own subterranean slick. I mean, that's
Wow.
yeah, that's a real polluter. What we're dealing with is a microscopic amount that's just above the legal limit. So it's and then I've got into the science of this in my lawsuit, which has been fascinating. There's an equation. It's called Domenico's. It's probably equation where you can actually calculate the transport. It's called of a certain chemical in groundwater, and you can say
Yes.
over 50 feet. What's it going to be? This stuff couldn't travel 20 feet and not basically extinguish itself. It's VOCs. These are volatile organic compounds that evaporate. They just take care of themselves. All the levels over 20 years have basically gone completely down. There is no significant threat. There is the presence. It doesn't I've been here for 10 years. I've lived in this building. I've had my blood tested. I said all this at the meeting. I said, I've been here. I'm totally fine. There's nothing, it doesn't affect anybody except if you were to dig down 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 feet and eat the dirt. And a lot of dirt, if you like at that dirt, you could maybe get a little woozy because it's such a small, it's not like a slick down there. Do you understand? There's no pool or festering, bubbling, gurgling
So
barrel of toxin,
so
you know?
they're not just wanting to remediate. They want to take your building down too.
No, no, no. They want to go, they want to take it over like quartering their troops in my building. This is the threat. They have the legal power, which is legitimate. If you have a real polluter or contaminator, the state has the power to go in, violate technically the Constitution and the Fourth and Fifth and 14th Amendments about property, unreasonable seizure, unreasonable takings, that type of thing, due process. They can basically say you have a major threat. We're going to go in and we're going to take over and do. So that's a legitimate thing, that the tool that they have. But when it's used against someone like me, and they have put that threat on me because I've said this is not going forward. I'll see you in court, and they're like, well, we're going to come basically, and so that's why I got the judge. I'm still waiting for the TRO, which is a temporary restraining order, to be given against them to actually completely stop them in their tracks. I don't think they're going to do anything now because the Attorney General of New York State already has been served. They already know they've been served. The governor of the state, Kathy Hochul, she's been served. These are all the officials involved in this case. And so right now with this order to show cause, their job before the judge is to say, this is the justification for a significant threat classification of the site. And it's, I don't like to use the French word, but it is BS, man. It is completely, it's rubbish. It's so much rubbish that I asked them on the platform. So where's the threat? And it's silence. And so out of one side of their mouth, and they want it to be a threat. You know why? Because then they can have a job, they can justify all those people sitting on the platform and then writing a $600,000 check to the contractor. And who knows who gets what of this money. And then the lawyers have jobs and everybody's kept busy. Because if it was class three, it basically, well, there's stuff there, just walk away because it's not threatening anyone.
Yes, yes, man, that's crazy. So with the remediation that they want to do, what the issue is not that that they want to do the remediation, they want to blame you for it and charge you for it.
Well, I'm classified, and this is another problem with New York State, as what's called a PRP. It's like a perp, a potentially responsible party. And I already contested it, and I said,
That's bullshit.
no,
That's bullshit.
no, but you should read the order. They say you are a PRP, and I wrote back to them. I said, "Well, if I'm potentially responsible, how come you're demanding that I clean it up when you haven't even determined that I'm responsible? It's like being
Right.
found guilty before you're guilty." And it's like this is rubbish. It's rubbish. I'm telling you, it's absolute stupidity and rubbish. And it's going to take the judge has, thank God, the he has the legal rights. This is the type of hearing that's strictly based upon, it's not a trial, it's a hearing strictly based upon their finding,
Evidentiary finding.
right, their data only, and how they contradict themselves, because it says clearly these are the requirement. There are three requirements for a class two classification, and it fails two out of three. And if they try to say the third one, which is the source, where's the source? This building was never a dry cleaner. We're down gradient from the dry cleaner. It's 300 feet
Yeah.
away, man. You've already done the tests. It's right there in your drawings from the last guy. How do you not put two into this? They change contractor, and the new contractor completely ignores everything outside my property line, and most of it's on the neighboring property anyway. And I'm like, look at the drawing from your first guy. It said he drew a straight line from them to me, and you're telling me that this chemical that's on my property doesn't come from him. You haven't
Right.
even done the test, the isotope test that they could run, where they're going to compare the actual chemical to chemical. Is it the same stuff? Because it's the identical chemical, but is it the same one that they haven't even done that? There's so many errors of law in what they've done. The contractor himself, he used residential limits in very small print on his findings to show that this amount exceeded the residential limit. And I said, excuse me, this is a class 1A industrial building, and the limits for that are above what you have said. So in order for him to find it justifiable, he had to use residential limits. And I'm like, it's just stupid. This
Wow.
is an incompetence on a level where I hope the judge is just going to say, go and pound sand, because this is obviously not class two. There is no significant threat. And it is a class three. Yeah, there's some stuff in the ground here. And that's it. And they basically have to walk away until it takes care of itself. It might be another 10, 20 years until
Right.
the levels are already so close to being not an issue that they will eventually clean itself up.
See, so there's some, I'm familiar with some of these Superfund sites around the country, not in New York, but Pennsylvania and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So if you're willing to stay, most of the time they just have you sign something that says hey, I'm not going to come after the government. You just leave me alone. Everything is good.
They should have
And
done that when I approached them when I bought the building. Yep.
exactly, which makes me think it might be malicious because, like, you've heard that expression, show me the man, I'll show you the crime out of
Well,
Russia.
I was gonna in blogs that I'm writing, I was gonna write that same thing. Like these people, that's exactly, Ricky, that's exactly the attitude that they are displaying. And I wrote it's in this they wrote about it in the paper the other day. I said it's as if they want to they don't care about what they're doing. They want if it's, they're just going to prosecute you. And again, that might be training. It might be the way the law is in New York State that it sort of ties the hands of their attorneys that anybody, we're going to go get them and you're like, hold on a second, you got to be crazy here. So I think that even and once I get this ruling, God willing, on the 19th, it's going to give me real leverage to go after them again because then I'm going to go back and I'm going to sue them then for misclassification for a decade. There's so many negative impacts that their classification has had on me. Not able to sell the building, two people under contract walked away, blah blah blah. So there's been a major, issue in that sense. But that issue, the legislative issue, I'm going to pursue that because they are their behavior is prosecutorial against somebody like me that is I'm a citizen wanting to fix up our town. And you would think that you people had the mind to say, this is great, Mr. Raven. And it's not just me. I just wrote, and I was writing as I clicked on to log, and I'll have the blog done. But in 2021 or 2020, another artist from New York City bought a big building down the street from me. And he had this vision. He's turning an art center and studios and art really cool, big, very, very big. Mine's 6,000 square feet. This is like 50,000 square feet. So big thing,
Wow.
really, very interesting vision. And he abandoned it. And why? Because somebody said to him, maybe there's ink from, because it used to be the printer of the newspaper, the Star Gazette. Maybe there is ink that has spilled into the dirt. And so he did this like environmental review in this first step. And they were like, everyone got afraid. And he said, by the second one, started to become so expensive that he abandoned the project and he walked away. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the insanity because he's another guy that the DEC should have said, welcome. He signed this paper, like you said. We want to cooperate with you. We want to see this happen.
We're
And if
so
you
happy that somebody's here. That's what they could do. We're so happy. They should have wrote you a letter. Hey, Julian, we are so happy that you're willing to take over this property and that you're willing to do what we couldn't, which
yeah,
is rehab the land and make it useful again.
yep.
And forget about remediation. If it's not an issue, what the hell does it need to be remediated for?
For anyway, well, that gets into the sort of the gray area where you're like, are they doing this because they just do it and no one questions them? Because imagine if I didn't question. Imagine the how many other people are like me.
That's a good
I,
point. How many times have they done this before?
they scared off this guy. There's a major story, a news story, which you can read about that happened in Southport, which is about 3 4 miles from me. Southport's attached to South Elmira, about Peanut the squirrel. You know,
Yes, yes,
you've heard about the squirrel? That
yes.
happened right here. It's the guy that he has the sanctuary where the DC
Same
thinking that
people.
same people they basically like with a SWAT team went into this guy's house to snatch his little pet squirrel. Not a pet. He had rescued the squirrel and a
Yeah.
raccoon. You heard the story. So it was national news. The same people, and it's just down the
And
street
they
from.
they wanted to protect the squirrel so much they then killed it.
They euthanized it for they misclassified it because they thought it had rabies, right? And then it turns out it didn't have rabies. I mean, those people are suing them still, and this is the same people. This is the same DEC. It's exactly the same.
Unbelievable.
So when you have three, like a trifecta of stories within, like a 10 square mile radius, then it makes you start to wonder, are they ideologically driven, which I believe they are. There's totally driven, you can have a total environmental agenda that, oh my goodness, we're gonna do, and they're so blind to the human aspect, to the revitalization of the area. They couldn't care less. They've got their jobs. They're New York state employees. We just got to
And then
walk.
it's like they're saying, "We're all gonna die."
So it's like, can you imagine getting like that like SWAT invasion to capture your squirrel? I mean, it's so stupid. It's so typical of bureaucracy gone mad. And that's what New York State really has as a problem. Very similar. I was in Spain, like I said, where I grew up, and Spain is a marvelous country. It's beautiful. It's got a beautiful culture, but it is crippled by bureaucracy to the power of 10 compared to where we are.
No
And oh,
kidding.
oh, it's not even funny. Like Spain, why they have such a vibrant culture is the Spaniard has learned that it's not even worth trying to do anything. You might as well just go
Yes.
out and have a good time. And they've mastered dinner and food and wine and good times, and they're masters of it because the bureaucracy is completely broken and impenetrable and dysfunctional and punitive. So they just say, we don't even bother. We just go down to the bar. And that's
And
all they
it's like there's whole factions of the federal government that is trying to make the entire United States that way. It's unbelievable. And I'm just sitting over here like the more people you throw at this situation, the worse it's going to get. Because and I having to explain bureaucracy to my wife like as she's living through a bureaucracy.
Yep.
She is a so she's an HR analyst. And so she is very familiar with bureaucracy.
Sure.
And I told her, I was explaining it to her this way. I was like, you know, when you go to work and you have a meeting, and she's like, yeah. And I said, and most generally, that meeting, about half of it is about future meetings. And she says, yeah. And I said, when you get to those future meetings, you talk about having more meetings. And she's like, yeah. I said, that's bureaucracy in a nutshell. It's when your feet get stuck in mud because you can't make any decisions,
Yep.
but you have to put the decisions you want to make up high and hope that they reach for them. And it's so ridiculous. I hate bureaucracy mostly because it stands in the way of getting shit done.
No, well, that's the point. That's the big gist of my blog, saying how the bureaucracy. See, I said the blog is titled here. It's like, basically fear is the pollutant over here. Fear is and then the fear creates a bureaucracy to fix the fear or fix the reasons for the fear, and then it all becomes a system that clogs the system and punishes. When you see this guy, and I've been fighting this for years, but not head on like it's been in the last, basically, it's been the last since 2022 when they started really knocking on my door, and now obviously with the lawsuit. But this other guy, he just walked away. And he said there's no way. He just walked away. And most people will walk away because you're dealing with the state of New York. It's a big power. They're afraid. It's the DC. They're going to come after you, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know what? There's too much. I'm an American. That's what just makes it crazy for me. I said, this is not Spain. And in Spain, you would walk away because in Spain, there's no recourse. You go to a court or a judge, it's so corrupt. It's which judge you can afford to buy because he knows this judge and they're going to be able to get your case heard within the next 5 years rather than it taking 10 or 15 years. I mean, you're talking about a clogged bureaucracy that is so discouraging. So here it's not. Here it's America, and here I'm the citizen. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to stand for this. You're gonna hear from me. And I love it because that's America to me. And that's why when this DC sense that I got since the beginning was all like chill, chill, chill. And I'm like, this is America. And this is where I can speak and say something. And I'm going to say this is stupid because you are crippling creativity and ingenuity and a vision and a whole, how many rundown industrial areas in the country, New York City, have been revitalized because artists went in, took over these massive spaces that nobody wanted, renovated them, painted, made sculptures, and before long, people with money went down there wanting to buy art, and before long they wanted cafes or restaurants, and then they
Yes.
turned them into lofts, and then before long the whole place is now one of the most expensive places to live. And they were industrial warehouses, massive brick buildings that were empty. That's a proven history. It's not imagination. And so when the same spirit in people comes to the city like this and they do what they do, that's where you like, and this is why I'm in this fight. I believe it's just this is my destiny again to stand up against this garbage and shine a
Right.
light on it and say, nope, no, this is America, and the citizen has the power to speak and act and change things. And maybe it's going to be legislative down the road. Maybe it's going to be banging on the door of these congressmen or senators locally in this New York State Senate to say this law needs to be fixed. Who knows? But all I can say, Rick, is that I'm not going to lie down and be quiet.
I appreciate that, man. And this is something for like for all of us, to be honest with you. It's not just New York State. When something like this happens and you speak out, like I'm here in Missouri, you're in New York. And the more the word gets out, the more people hear about this, the more people understand what is actually going on versus what the state says is happening,
Right.
which I don't even know. How do you reconcile the fact that the state wants you in that on that property, but then once you get on that property, they make you jump through hoop after hoop after
Or they come
hoop?
after you, or they come after
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
You see, the
And
federal law, there's a federal law, it's called CIRCLA, CIRCLA, and it's an acronym. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but the federal law has what's called it's a BFPP classification. It's a bona fide purchaser classification that you can go to get from the federal government, where they will cover you and indemnify you because they want people like me to buy these properties and renovate them and allow then the process to go forward. If it really needs remediation, you're indemnified. You're not held harmless as long as you do your job and you have a specific role to do in the process. You get to renovate them. New York State doesn't abide by that federal law, and the bona fide purchaser is they modified and they have their own crippled version of it, and that's what they've refused even to give to me. And I'm like, so why haven't you given me this classification? I went to you before I bought it. I told you what I wanted to do. All you needed to do was like a little scribble on a piece of paper. What would it cost you? What would it cost you to sign a paper saying this guy who has nothing to do with what's in this building is never going to be held responsible for what's in the building? All he needs to do is what he said is renovate, fix it up, make it look nice. So the area's value, what would it cost them? I'm like, you guys are nuts. Sign a little paper. That's all it is some ink. Because how in the world can you, and the other analogy, and I'll probably end with this for you, is this. This is what I wrote on my website. And if anybody wants to find out more, they can go to 714 Baldwin Street .com. That's 714 Baldwin Street. But the analogy that I wrote, the story is like this. You come to this beautiful upstate town in whichever state, and you see this street of houses and this old houses, and it's not completely run down, but they're trying to get on their feet. It's not high end. And you drive to the cul-de-sac at the end of the street. There's this massive, beautiful home that is all boarded up, broken glass, overgrown, and you're like, wow, look at that. And you're like, yes, and there are the properties like that here. This is what it was like for me. And then you knock on the neighbor's door and you're like, what in the world is going on with this property? How come? And they're like, oh, it's haunted. It's like a ghost in there. And you're like, ghosts? And you're like, yeah, like 50 years ago, Mr. Baldwin, he disappeared, and his wife, they never found her. And he went and lived in Florida, and Mrs. Baldwin vanished and nobody knows. And so there's ghosts in there, and everyone, it's like all this fear, like, oh, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's 50 years. What's the deal? Oh, this mindset. So you end up doing some research and you buy the property and you're renovating the property, and it's great. You got it for a great price. You're fixing it up. You're all encouraging. You're digging in the basement one day and dig, and then crack. And you're like, oh my goodness, what's that? And you dig up the dirt, and there's the skull of someone's buried. And then you dig up some more, and there's the bones and the rib cage, and you're like, oh my goodness, it's Mrs. Baldwin. And you call the sheriff, and you're like, I think I found Mrs. Baldwin in the basement. And the police come and the press come, and it's taping up the building, with it cordoned off, and oh, and the neighbors and everyone's like, oh my goodness, and they're woo 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 and all this stuff, and they're digging her up, and they find, yeah, that's it, and you're standing there like, great, we solved the mystery of Mrs. Bolton. This is wonderful. I'm here, and the sheriff comes up to you and says, Mr. Raven, you're under arrest for the
Yeah.
murder of Mrs. Baldwin.
That's it. That is a great comparison because that's kind of what I was thinking about. Like, so they they want somebody on the property, somebody comes on the property, somebody buys the property, whatever, and then they come out and do some soil samples, or they may have had the soil samples done already.
They did, yeah.
And so they're like, finally, we got a sucker on the property we can blame, so we don't have to pay for this. And it's like, nobody had to pay for it to begin with. This isn't that big of a deal. Let's contain it and move on.
That
And
would have been that's the reasonable response, and that's probably what's going to happen now, once the judge has to get involved and make the ruling, because
yeah,
he'll,
after they waste $1 million
well, all these years
fighting it.
studies and all this other stuff that they've been doing, and all these employees coming to meetings and public hearings, and years of like, they've all basically created work for themselves because if it was a class 3, it would have been filed away 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what the story is. So anybody that's interested, they can keep touch at 714 Baldwin Street. My other lawsuit is marching along boldly in Washington, D.C. I have other actions that I have put in place. It's really quite interesting what's going on with that. I'm waiting for the shutdown has everybody furloughed, so the DOJ is basically hardly functioning.
Yeah.
And I think that I got a note saying that they had a time limit to respond to the final response I made, and now it's going to be probably November, December, might be the beginning of January, because they add all the days of the shutdown,
Oh,
they add it to the date. So if it
yeah.
was 30 days, it's going to be 30 days, and it's going to fall on Christmas, and then it'll be the new
2 more weeks after that.
after that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I've
So,
got some very interesting. Been really learning, and I have motions that I've filed, and I actually found that's called the motion to vacate. I can file a motion to vacate the 2018 decision because it's baloney. It was baloney then. It was an error of law. And everything that went on in 2025 with the firing of the National Portrait Gallery director, or the attempted firing, how the president couldn't fire her, she had to resign, all of this stuff validates my arguments, and it invalidates the judgment of the court, which said that if the Smithsonian was the government through and through, like the judge said, when the president fired her, she would have not turned up for work the next day. But what did she do? She turned up for work the next day. She's like, no, this is a private organization.
you can't fire me.
There's no authority. And then the Smithsonian came out with a statement and said the Smithsonian is an independent entity. Don't touch. And that meeting was held by the vice president. J.D. Vance was at that meeting. Judge Roberts, 3 members of Congress, 3 members of the Senate. Those were all sitting at the table, and they came up with a statement and said, "We're an independent entity. Mr. President, go pound sand." From the vice president, go figure. And that's then the validation to say, you guys, this judge is. I said, it's going to give him a chance to fix his record. You have to vacate that ruling because it's baloney. And so it's some very, very interesting things with that. And that's I'm drafting that as we speak, and that'll all be before the court. So we might not get a response to that until after December, by the looks of it, because of the shutdown. But he's going to have plenty of time to think about it. That's for sure.
Well, I'd love to have you back on again in um after that kind of after a little while of this, these cases mature a little bit and get some updates and stuff. But I just love talking to you. I love your accent, and you're an amazing storyteller. But let me ask you this before I let you go. What kind of toll does this take on you personally? Because this isn't the first fight that you've had with government entities, and it's certainly probably not going to be the last. And what kind of toll does this take on you personally?
Well, before I engage, I go through trepidation. It's like can be terrifying. You are you're you're like, oh my goodness, I mean, what am I going to do? Because I do that. I'm the type of person, like I said, I don't have the means. I'm not hiring some fleet of lawyers. This would be a massive expense if you had to hire the lawyers to do this. It would probably be 50 grand or more. You'd be looking at a
Yeah.
lot of money. They wouldn't even take the case, go on up against New York State, blah, 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 blah. All the research, you have to hire these very specialist legal firms that specialize in this type of info, blah, blah, blah. Big, big, big money. It's not me. So as a learner, and I've been at self-taught law school now for a decade nearly, since 2016. So 9 years. So I've become very equipped in that area. But still, when I went to that meeting in June, I always hope the best, and you believe the best. Like First Corinthians 13. Love believes all things, hopes all things. My worldview is a Christian informed worldview. So you always are believing, hoping. Love has this power to just trance the negative in front of you, or at least try to. And so you approach it with a positive attitude. And you're hoping they're going to say, and I wrote so many letters to them, like, I'm just waiting for them to write back and say, Mr. Raven, this is great. We've decided to do that. And I'd be like, oh, God. And it never happened. And so when after that meeting happened in June, I really was expecting them, because of what the stupid stuff they said from the pulpit, basically saying, admitting there's no threat. I'm like, oh, come on, put it together and just draft a letter. Say this. They didn't. I get the order and consent letter on September 5th. And that's like, oh my God, that's like, I'm not even, I'm not, I'm in the mode, thank God, with my Smithsonian case. So I'm in that mode, but I'm like, this is New York State now. And you go through, at the initial part, I have to go through this like retooling and focusing of my mind and heart to prepare myself. And I've been preparing for this for a decade, but you were always hoping that it wouldn't happen,
Yeah.
but you're still preparing yourself. And then I go through this period of like trepidation and like terror of like, oh my goodness, and all these scenarios playing out in your head. And what am I going to do? When I was in Spain, I'm like, should I just abandon the building? And I'm like, no, it's got all my paintings in it. What am I going to do with that? Well, my big paint, I can't just store these paintings anywhere. They're huge, so I have all these dilemmas. And so I'm like, oh no. And so you go through this up and down emotional toil and I've worked very hard on this building, and I love this building, and I have done a lot and painted a lot of great work here. And
We're going to put a picture of the building up as
okay,
we're talking about it here. And it is you've done a great job with it, Julian. You really
oh,
have.
and inside it's open. There's no columns. It's got massive trusses. It's gorgeous. And so you have all these desires, and you have lots more that are unfulfilled, because as everything that I did to the best, but I was always like, you'd always question, oh, because what if they, what if they,
Yes.
and so it never allowed you to fully be everything you wanted it to be. Now that all may change, God willing, from November 19th onwards. So all of that plays out in your mind. And then when I get this letter, and even with the Department of Justice, with the Smithsonian kids, when I get the letters from them, I'm terrified. I mean, I don't even want to open them. I will look at them for days. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's the Department of Justice. You're like, I'm just a regular guy. I want to just paint pictures, for goodness sake, leave me alone. So
Yes.
but then you have a duty, and it's stupid and it's wrong, and I got to do it. So I read this letter from September the 5th of the DEC, and I studied it word for word, and I'm like, this is stupid. This is absolutely stupid. And I wrote them a letter, and I said, go and pound sand, basically, with their order on consent. I said, I'm not doing a single thing. This is stupid. I didn't say it like that, but I told them. And then you sort of switch gears, and you enter the mode of, it's like battle mode. And
Yeah.
and my whole studio, if you go on the website, you'll see, all the Facebook page even, my war room and all the charts and all my work. I had it laid out and printing. I've been printing hundreds of pages. I had to create. Let me show you. Let me see before. Take this as. Hold on one second. I had I had to create um, 11 copies of this. This is my brief here. I don't know if you can see it.
There
This,
we go. Yeah. Raven versus NYCDEC or
that's right.
NY State.
Yeah, New York State. And so but it's a big book. I mean, there's hundreds of pages here, and it's all the data and all the story. And so once you the marvelous thing, and this is the encouragement maybe for your audience. Yeah, knowledge is power. It is power. It is power that's available to all of us. A lot of people default to buying a gun, which is power and it's raw power, and it's good. Yeah, it's a form of power. We need to have that. That's great. But you can't. The knowledge is the greatest power, I believe, that there is. Knowledge is the key to freedom, understanding, improving ourselves. You name it. Any type of positive life experience comes from what we learn and how we apply that knowledge. So when I finally apply myself, like I said, studying that letter, and I get it, and I'm like, this is stupid, and I get then the righteous indignation, and then you're fueled for the battle. And the more that you research, the more that you're like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. So the point is we all can do better when it comes to the learning and the participating, and not abdicating our responsibilities to people who we think, oh, these guys are just going to do it, or the politicians. And when the authorities come knocking on our door, we need to be diligent to understand, and to not just expect someone to explain it to us and remain ignorant and dumb, because then we're powerless. But when we have the knowledge, the power, I can then go to the Attorney General of whether it's the Department of Justice in Washington D.C. or the Attorney General here in Binghamton, New York. They're sitting, it's Letitia James. She's always in the media.
Yes, yes, I
It's
know.
her department. So and I can turn up there and say, here, I'm serving you. Although I didn't do it personally, I had to have someone else do it. I'm serving you a lawsuit because we're taking these people to task. And it's the knowledge that you researched and found out. You said, you know what, this is true, this is right, and I have a standing, and I can make this happen because of that. And that's how I alleviate the pain. But it's that threshold that you have to cross over, and you have to spend the hours doing the reading, and hours and reading and then rereading. I've been reading this stuff for 10 years. When I first read it, when you get a DEC report that's like science, they have just hundreds of pages of data and numbers, and you look at it, you're like, oh, it's like terrifying. You're like, no, I
And
know.
that's why they put it in there.
That's right. And they do it. And I said that to them at that public meeting. I said, why don't you guys translate this for the common man? I said, nobody here. We're looking, Baldwin Street, where I'm on, is like poverty, low income. It's just commercial, and anybody that lives here, it's like, this is like a dangerous place. People are, they're like terrified to come here.
Like,
So
yeah,
anybody,
what exactly are you trying to say here?
anybody at that meeting, I'm like, why don't you like give illustrations or charts or diagrams to actually explain the threat in the visuals, that we can actually understand how big it is. Show
Right.
us the size of the threat. And my son was sitting there with me, and he kept hearing these numbers, and he went online and he started like tapping into his phone to work it out. He's like, Dad, that's just like microscopic. He's like, what in the world? He worked it out for himself. But the average person who doesn't, when they hear the numbers, oh my goodness, the
Well, see,
world.
Julian, that's the problem, is because the people that are explaining these numbers to you don't understand them themselves. And
Well,
if they had that visual representation, like you're saying, they'd be like, well, shit, this isn't even worth bothering.
well, that exactly can be the case with the majority of them. That the geologist should, but I believe he's already twisting the stuff, because when there's one number, for example, which they put down in this little box, and it's in micrograms. So It's measured and so it was 720 micrograms. And you look at it and it's like, wow, 720. That could be really big. And I'm like, well, what is 720 micrograms in grams? And I sketched the computer out and well, 720 micrograms in grams is this 0.00072. That's what 720 micrograms. I mean, it's just tiny. It's like invisible nearly to the naked eye. Then I said, all right, so what are 720 micrograms if they were grains of sand? And so I started researching the weight of a grain of sand, and it came up that it's equivalent to about 11 grains of sand. So we have 720 micrograms is about 11 grains of sand in one. Hold on a second. I'll get my bottle. I bought this specially for my hearing so that I could demonstrate 1 liter of clear water. So here it is. So this is 1 liter, 1,000 cc's. So the contamination that's in 1 liter of groundwater beneath my building, if you were to dig it up, you would find 11 grains of sand is the size in 1 liter in 1,000 cc's of the contamination. And if you take that and dump it out on the ground somewhere, you're never going to see it or find it. It's like nothing. It's the place that I told you about that had the slick floating on the ground. You'd have you'd have like a big thick slick of something. It's 11 grains of sand in 1,000 cc's of water. That's what it is. And
Wow.
and the legal amount that they're allowed to have in the water, which there is in the drinking water, is 5 micrograms is the legal threshold. So this is 72. So it's four. I worked it out like this. You would have to drink 4 gallons of water from the tap, and you would have the amount that is in the groundwater where I am, which doesn't affect the drinking water because it's going to go into the river and disappear, or never, or not even get there. But the point is, you would still. It's 4 grams. It's 4 gallons of water. You drink four
Yeah.
gallons of water. That's the amount. That's it. That's what it is. So it's a minuscule amount that they want to show. Oh, this is a significant threat. I said, are you kidding me? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? This is ridiculous. It's stupid. Stupid. That's it.
There's
Stupid.
a thing. I was sued recently and I actually won on some technicalities, but there's this thing. It's like sometimes they don't expect, I think most of the time they don't expect pushback.
Pushback. There you go.
And I think when it happens, it takes them off guard and they're not prepared for it because they're supposed like the reason the biggest thing for me when I went to this court case was to make sure I was represented and that I didn't hold myself, I didn't fall short of my
Sure.
goal
Sure.
because I didn't show up.
Sure.
And a lot of people lose by default. A lot of people don't fight. A lot of people are like, well, even if you're guilty as charged or whatever it is, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. And in your
Sure.
case, you're being prosecuted by the state because they say that 11 grains of sand in a whole liter is enough to what
Threaten the neighborhood.
they don't even know. They don't even know. That's the problem. They don't know, and they assume that we're going to send this whole packet of shit over to Julian and he's just going to give up
He's
because
just
he
going to
sees
fold.
this big old stack.
That's it. And that's the point for the listener. You must, and like I said, the knowledge threshold is intimidating. It was for me. It is every time, and it takes time. You have to dedicate your life to it, but it's worth it. You reap rewards even from that. Like I'm fascinated by learning anyway. I love learning science, geology, it's technology. You got all this stuff in there. It's like it's new stuff. I'm learning. I'm getting better. I'm
Right.
improving myself. I'm not losing by doing this. And then you turn around and when the wonderful thing about it is that and this is the same as what you're saying about people who they're on the receiving end of that, the big book or something, and it's like it's intimidating. It is. It's terrifying, but you can equip yourself. You can learn. You can make the effort. And you got like rereading. I've reread this stuff over and over and over again because it didn't mean a thing to me when I read it at
Yeah,
first. It
yeah,
was like
and that's and
gobbledygook.
it didn't mean a damn thing when they sent it, Julian. That's why they sent it. And in my case, it was so funny to me because like I went to court. The first appearance was like, listen, you've got to prove it. Like the burden of proof is on you. It's not on
Yep.
me. I don't have to prove a damn thing. You have to prove what you're saying is true. And so when I asked him for that proof, a couple weeks later, a big old packet of shit came to me in the mail, and there wasn't a damn thing in it, Julian. It was formalities, and that they could have sent in an email, but they wasted a bunch of money to print it out and send to me. But the actual proof that I requested was on a CD-ROM. And I don't know, maybe you have a CD-ROM drive at your house. I do
Yep.
not.
I still
It's
have
tw
one. Yep.
it's 2025 and all my equipment is less than 2 years old. I don't have a CD-ROM drive. And so I didn't get a chance to even open it up. I was going to go to court to ask the judge to compel them to give me paper documents because I couldn't read what was on the disc.
Sure.
And when I showed up to court, they weren't there. And so I won by default.
Wow.
And so I walked out of court with my head held high. I sure showed them. Well, a couple weeks later, they sent
Yeah.
a motion to hold the dismissal, and I was like, "What the hell is this? Can they do this? Is this legal?" I
Yep.
won. And basically, when doing my research, all it says was, I have the equal opportunity to do the same. Like if they got a default judgment or if they got a judgment on their behalf and I wanted to put a stop to it to give myself another chance,
There's
I
another
would
the
I would do
window.
the right. I would fill out the same motion. And I was like, well, as long as I have the same, you know, abilities to do that, I'm not mad about it. But I am gonna fight it. And I showed up to court and I was like, look, they had their chance. I was here. The burden of proof is on them. I don't have to show anything. And the judge is like, he's right. We're going to dismiss this. So it was a great feeling for me because I knew that I was right. And that's the thing about it is when you have that conviction of knowing like, am I just crazy here? Is everybody not seeing this? Like I feel so surreal in moments like that. Like I'm like, is everybody blind or am I stupid? Like I second guess myself like that, and then I talk to people like you, and you're like, well, no, that's part of the game, man. That's what
It's
they do intentionally.
It is, yeah, and I think
It's
that
so frustrating.
I think so. I mean, the intimidation factor is part of the game. If they can intimidate you, if they can get you to fold, they have it in the bag, and they're not expecting, as you said, they're not expecting the pushback, and that's again where I have then compassion, and as I walk through these experiences, and I've been going through it for years in the sense you grow. I wrote about it in my book, the Odious and Cerberus book. I wrote about it, how climbing the mountain, I had to, it was sections, it was in the allegorical part, there was sections where I had to climb over the bones of people that had gone before me and basically died on
Yes.
the mountain because they didn't get justice and they didn't even make it, but they suffered the consequences of the ordeal of climbing the mountain and they perished. And that is tragic. And it makes me, I hope and pray. And my daughter just passed the bar, the legal bar in North Carolina. She just became a lawyer. She graduated in May, but she just passed the bar and she's living down there. And, she has her life and career ahead of her and those things. But my hope, God willing, is when my Smithsonian case especially is resolved and I get, God willing, the outcome that I believe I'm going to get, we'll see that the advocacy aspect of it on behalf of others, to be a voice. My daughter wants to be the voice for the voiceless. She's like her conviction from a young age to be able to be, and that's where attorneys have such a huge opportunity and responsibility, those who contend for the light, to stand in the gap for the voiceless, for those who really can't. There are those people who really can't. There are those people who, yeah, you can say read this all day long, and to them it's going to be gobbledygook all day long. It's not going to change
Absolutely.
because they struggle. Whether it's their ability to comprehend or read or whatever it is, everybody, we all have different abilities, strengths, and talents. And we have to then see with a heart of compassion our fellow man who is being chewed up by the machine. They're being like consumed by the machine. And if we can stand in the gap and say, hey, I can be a voice for this person, that's noble. And there are people that can fund it. There are people that can, I want to build that. I want to build an organization, which I've tried to, an advocacy, activist organization where you just become another instrument where you can really be a voice for the voices. Because what I go through, you do not wish anybody else to go
Yeah,
through. You
man,
want
I've got goosebumps, Julian, hearing about your daughter, man. Defend the defenseless is kind of one of my mantras that I go by. And I have three boys. I've three boys and a girl. And teaching them empathy, teaching them compassion, teaching
sure,
them defend the defenseless kind of ideals. Like we don't do what we do because it might serve us. Sometimes we do what we do because it's the right thing to do.
sure.
And I'm so happy that you didn't fold. I'm so happy that you didn't give up your building. And I'm so happy that you didn't give up your fight with the Smithsonian because like that painting is beautiful, by the way. It's giant painting and it's so beautiful and it's so
When you
patriotic.
when you see it in real life, it's a whole other story. And that again, going back to your point there, my hope and prayer, and it already has had that impact because they know I am on their radar. They know this is I have pressed the issue. They know, and that already causes people to scrutinize more correctly or more
Yes,
accurately. And what is the point for there? Well, the next artist who turns up, that he needs to be treated with the respect and dignity, no matter what he believes, no matter what his
absolutely.
persuasion, no matter what his creed. He is a human. He is a citizen. He is deserving of all of those protections that we celebrate, but get so trampled by these some, not all, but some of these bureaucrats. That's what we do. And same with this case. You see, if I prevail with this DEC case, my story, which I'm going to go and write, got this blog written about with the other guy down the street and the squirrel people and this, like, you know what? We're going to push back, and the DEC is going to change the way it treats this type of a person. These were just regular folks. These weren't corporate polluters, or these weren't this guy with the
Yeah.
squirrel opens a sanctuary for animals. My wife was down there just recently. So they got 100 horses and sheep and rabbits, and they got hundreds of animals and volunteers, and this is what they do. Well, this is not some big corporation. The artist, he's an artist from Brooklyn. He wants to do this with this big building that nobody wants, and put artists and painters and stuff like that. On the same time, we are the little guy, and the at a minimum that we cause this bureaucracy to say we either have to develop an office within us to cater to the little guy, because not everybody is going to be the big corporate monster who needs to
Right.
be treated like this. Okay, I get it. Big guns and big money and big lawyers doing this, but we're not that. We are the
Yes.
little guy, and that's where our advocacy can bring about awareness and consciousness of people then say, yeah, you know what, this is really necessary. And we're not going to allow that ever again to happen in the city. And that's that. If I can accomplish that, we've done something, because then people will believe again, rather than say, man, it's not even worth it because look what's happening to these people. And that's what I say. And I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. These people, the DC, and I wrote, it was in the article, I believe they printed. I said, for 10 years, I invited them into an opportunity to tell a positive, redemptive story of state and citizen cooperation, doing something beautiful that will inspire others, that will bring people to think differently and invest or create or want to see something derelict and say, hey, maybe we can fix that, not the little guy. They've squandered that opportunity and they've turned it into an adversarial little guy with a giant, okay, whatever. Maybe it benefits me in the long run in that sense. That may be the case. But that's could have been a whole different story. It could have been, hey, this is great. This is cooperation. This is
Right.
building. This is doing beautiful. No, and that to me is heartbreaking because they had the chance, they had the opportunity to do that, and they kept folding their arms and being like, "Get away, we're not." And that's to me is tragic.
Julian, man, we've got to do this when you're not in trouble, man. We've got to do another one of these.
I'll be preaching the gospel there, so you have me on for that.
Hey, that's cool with me. I'm not super religious or anything, but I'm very spiritual, and the older I get, things are changing for me, and the more um on your building, Charlie Kirk was a huge inspiration for me, and I can't even describe to you how I felt when he passed. I had a hard time dealing with it, not because I was close to Charlie or not because I knew him personally, but because of what he stood for, and the direction, the reactions afterward were absolutely disgusting from both sides, And on the side of your building, man, it's actually at the front of your building. You have
Yeah, 300 square foot banner. Yep.
you have uh, a, a a mural of Charlie Kirk, and it says, "Father, forgive them, Jesus Christ." And I love that, and it's perfect for the times that we're going through right now.
It's
Forgive
the
them.
only way. It's the only way, unless you want to go the route of hatred and and it's not. It's just death. It's death and poison to your own soul. I know some people, they are just consumed and they're in their own poison. They can't get out of it. And it's like saying the only remedy for that is forgiveness. You see, Jesus changed the world when he, the innocent, forgave, when he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that to me is the world changing. That's why that was so important. And my first reaction, though, was not to put that up. My first reaction was to put something a little bit more pithy and biting up there. Not, it was like, and I had to really think about it. And I was like, yes, how me in my humanity, and you're like you want to you're like you're sick to the stomach, you're mad, you're angry because injustice. That was it's hard for me to, well, I can't even listen to him now. If I see any videos, I can't. It's too, I can't do it. It's
Yeah.
like it's a wound because as somebody who's been a public speaker and in public and
Yes.
had all of these encounters and had the encounter years ago. I've had these fierce encounters in public in the streets. I've been through all of this. When you see that level of hatred and just evil,
Yes.
there is a response that even when that's why even with Christ, it's like, well, you can't go and die on a cross. You're gonna pick up the sword and we're gonna take on the Romans. And it's like saying, listen, there has been those efforts, and there is a time for all things under the sun. But this time, the only remedy is and it's the power. And that then his wife came out and she then publicly forgives.
Yes.
How do you argue with that? How can you come
Yes.
back against it? That's it. It's the end of the conversation. It strips everybody of their reason. You're done. You're forgiven. As God forgives me, I forgive you. Oh my goodness. And in my attitude, like for example, with this New York State, I don't hold animosity against these people. I don't hold them. I would have a beer with them tomorrow. I would have this is like this is business. This is functioning in a legal system. This is the way the system works and
Yes.
should function well. And so you go and you prosecute or you litigate in these things because it's not, oh, I can get these people. It's not that. It's this,
Well, it's
this
like being mad at the
I,
police if you do something illegal, and it's like being mad at the police because you got arrested. Now, they have a job to do. That's what their job is, to catch criminals, and your job is to be a criminal. So, there's this whole give and take there. And man, when you say, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. I actually said that out loud, to myself and to the people I'm around for several days afterward. Forgive them because they know not what they do.
it's the only response that can heal. It's the only response that can make sense. This doesn't deny the evil. It doesn't deny. It's just you what, and that because you can only, and that's why the Christian message. It's the message that above anything else, it's so world changing because the rest of the prayer that Jesus said is basically your Father forgive, you forgive because you're freely forgiven. And it's like if you really know your state before God and you've accepted his and then how can you not extend it? It's like, you know what? This is one of those cases where there's because if not, you will be holding on to poison for your entire life and you will never get satisfaction. And one day you'll get to before God and he'll be like, well, you just could have forgiven them and it would have been done as I forgave you.
That's right.
You're
That's
like,
right.
so it's
And
very powerful. Yeah, it's
that's a
powerful.
great place to leave this conversation, Julian. Man, I'm just the last time I talked to you was great. This time I've talked to you, it's great. We've got to keep doing this. We got to keep this communication open. I love, like I said before, I love talking to you. I love your accent, your storytelling, your you're very animated, and I love that because it speaks to me, and it's exactly how I like to do things myself. So that being said, you guys can keep up with Julian. His website is it's 714baldwinstreet.com.
That's
And
the
are you on social media as well?
I am. Yeah, you can find me. I don't use it much, but I use my Facebook more than anything, and sometimes I'm not on there for months. But I then will go on for a few days and just post, and that's Julian Raven USA, and that's on Facebook, and we can friend there and communicate. I do have an Instagram page, which is Julian Raven. That's really just my art. I did a little. I might cross over because right now my art is my battle. That's what I'm involved in. That's where my creativity is. And then my Substack, where I do write quite a bit, is again it's Julian Raven, and it's the voice in the wilderness on Substack. And that's where, if you want sort of pithy opinion about what I'm dealing with, and I don't get into, there's so many voices and there's so many people saying so many things. I try to stick to what's in front of me
Yes.
and how I interpret it and see how it can benefit others to add just a little bit of fire maybe to their or fuel to their fire, should I say. So that's it. And then julianraven.com is my art website. And so and the Smithson is I have a few of them. The Smithson Institution is my Smithsonian battle. So there's a bunch of them.
We'll link those all in the description down below. Julian, you hang out with me for a second. We'll let these folks go. We I appreciate you guys coming and listening and hanging out with us, hanging out with Julian. It's been a great time. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.